as 34-year-old William Hayes stepped onto the covered porch of his log cabin, drawn outside by the sound of wagon wheels crunching through the fresh powder. The warm light from the oil lamps cast a golden glow across the snow-covered landscape, creating a scene both beautiful and harsh in the way that only the frontier winter could manage. William wore his heavy brown wool coat over dark trousers and sturdy boots, practical clothing that had served him well through 7 winters alone on his ranch. His dark hair was visible beneath his wide-brimmed hat, and his beard was neatly trimmed despite his isolation. The lines around his eyes spoke of a man who had learned to read the weather, the land, and the moods of livestock, but had almost forgotten how to read the hearts of people. As the wagon drew closer, William could see it was the weekly mail coach from town, running later than usual due to the storm. What surprised him was that the coach was stopping at his remote property instead of continuing on to the next settlement. The driver, bundled against the cold, climbed down and approached the porch. "Evening, Mr. Hayes," called out Pete Morrison, the grizzled mail carrier who had been running this route for 15 years. "Got a passenger here who was supposed to be met in town, but there seems to have been some confusion. Wonder if you might help us sort this out." William stepped down from the porch, his boots sinking into the snow. "What kind of confusion, Pete?" "Well, this young lady here came all the way from Boston, expecting to meet a gentleman named William Hayes for the purpose of marriage. But the William Hayes in town says he never sent for any bride, and frankly, he is already married with 3 children. William felt his stomach drop. He looked toward the coach, where he could now see a young woman sitting inside, barely visible through the frost-covered window. "There has been some mistake, Pete. I never sent for a mail-order bride either." Pete scratched his grey beard thoughtfully. "Well, that is what I figured, but the lady has your name and address written clear as day on her papers. Problem is, the storm is getting worse, and we cannot make it back to town tonight. The pass will be blocked until morning, maybe longer." William approached the coach and could see the young woman more clearly now. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, with long brown hair braided neatly and wearing a blue wool dress with a grey shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Even through the window, he could see that she was trying to maintain her composure despite what must have been a terrifying situation. William opened the coach door gently. "Miss, I am William Hayes. I understand there has been some confusion about your travel arrangements." The young woman looked up at him with eyes that held both intelligence and barely contained fear. In her gloved hands, she clutched a worn leather suitcase and what appeared to be official documents. "Mr. Hayes, my name is Catherine Morrison. I have traveled from Boston based on correspondence that indicated you were seeking a wife. I have the letters here, and I paid my own passage based on the arrangement we discussed." William accepted the papers she handed him and examined them by the light of the coach lantern. The letters were indeed addressed to him, written in a hand he did not recognize, and described a lonely rancher seeking an educated woman to share his life and help manage his property. The correspondence was detailed and convincing, mentioning specific aspects of his ranch that suggested the writer had real knowledge of his situation. "Miss Morrison, I want you to know that I did not write these letters. Someone has used my name without my knowledge or permission. But I also want you to know that you are not stranded or unwelcome. The storm will not allow travel tonight, so please, come inside where it is warm while we figure out how to resolve this situation." Catherine looked at him with a mixture of relief and continued uncertainty. "Mr. Hayes, I appreciate your kindness, but I must be honest with you. I spent nearly all of my savings on the journey here. If this arrangement is not genuine, then I have nowhere else to go and no means to return to Boston." William felt a wave of sympathy for this brave young woman who had traveled across the country based on what appeared to be an elaborate deception. "Miss Morrison, please do not worry about that right now. Let us get you warm and fed, and tomorrow we will work together to find a solution." As William helped Catherine down from the coach, he noticed that despite her obvious distress, she moved with quiet dignity. Her suitcase was well made but not expensive, and her clothing was practical and neat rather than fashionable. These were the choices of someone who was educated and respectable but not wealthy. Pete helped carry Catherine's belongings to the porch. "I will be back tomorrow if the weather clears," he said. "But Mr. Hayes, I have been doing this run for many years, and I have never seen anything like this situation. Someone went to a lot of trouble to create those letters and arrange this deception." After Pete departed, William showed Catherine into his cabin. The interior was comfortable but clearly the home of a bachelor. The main room contained a stone fireplace, a simple dining table, and shelves lined with books. Everything was clean and well maintained, but lacked the personal touches that a woman's presence typically provided. "Please, sit by the fire and warm yourself," William said, helping Catherine remove her shawl. "I will prepare some coffee and something to eat." As William worked in the kitchen area, Catherine examined the cabin with the observant eye of someone trying to understand her situation. "Mr. Hayes, may I ask you something directly?" "Of course." "The letters I received described you as a lonely man who had been unsuccessful in finding a suitable wife locally. Was any of that information accurate?" William paused in his preparations and considered how to answer honestly without making Catherine feel unwelcome. "The loneliness part was accurate. I have been managing this ranch alone for 7 years, since I inherited it from my uncle. As for finding a wife locally, the truth is that I had not been actively looking. I suppose I had convinced myself that I preferred the solitude." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "And now, how do you feel about discovering that someone thought you needed help in that area?" William brought coffee to the table and sat across from Catherine. In the warm light of the fire, he could see that she was quite beautiful, but more than that, she possessed an intelligence and composure that impressed him. "I find myself wondering who would go to such elaborate lengths to arrange this situation, and why." "I have been wondering the same thing," Catherine said. "The letters were very specific about your character, your values, and your situation. Whoever wrote them knew you well enough to make their description convincing." Over dinner, Catherine told William about her life in Boston. She had been working as a governess for wealthy families, a respectable but limited existence that offered little opportunity for marriage or financial security. When the letters arrived, offering the possibility of a partnership with a man who valued education and intelligence, she had seen it as a chance for a completely different kind of life. "I want you to know that I was not seeking charity or rescue," Catherine explained. "The correspondence suggested that you needed someone who could help manage the business aspects of the ranch, keep accounts, and possibly teach any children who might come along. I saw it as a genuine partnership, not just a marriage of convenience." William found himself increasingly impressed by Catherine's perspective and character. "What kind of education do you have, Miss Morrison?" "I attended the Boston Female Seminary and studied literature, mathematics, and natural sciences. I also learned bookkeeping and business correspondence while working for the Whitman family, who owned several textile mills." "Those are exactly the skills that would be valuable here," William admitted. "Managing the books for the ranch, correspondence with buyers and suppliers, planning for seasonal variations in income. I have been handling those tasks myself, but I am much better with cattle than I am with numbers." As the evening progressed, William realized that whoever had arranged this deception had actually understood both his needs and Catherine's capabilities remarkably well. The match, while engineered without their knowledge, was not random or careless. When it came time to retire for the evening, William insisted that Catherine take his bedroom while he slept on a cot near the fireplace. "Miss Morrison, I want you to know that you are completely safe here. Tomorrow we will decide what steps to take next, but tonight, please rest without any worry about your situation. Mr. Hayes, I want to thank you for your kindness. Many men in your situation might have been angry about the deception or unwilling to help a stranger. Catherine, if I may use your first name, you have done nothing wrong. You are the victim of someone else's scheme, and you have handled the situation with more grace than I think I would have managed in similar circumstances." The next morning, William woke to the smell of bacon and fresh coffee. He found Catherine in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with ingredients she had found in his well-stocked pantry. She had also built up the fire and tidied the main room, small touches that made the cabin feel more welcoming than it had in years. "I hope you do not mind," Catherine said with a slight smile. "I am accustomed to earning my keep, and I felt I should contribute something in exchange for your hospitality." "Mind? This is the best breakfast I have had in months." William sat down to a meal that was not just well prepared but thoughtfully presented, with attention to details he had forgotten were important. As they ate, Catherine looked around the cabin again, this time with a different expression. "William, may I share an observation with you?" "Please do." "This is a beautiful property, and you have clearly worked very hard to build something worthwhile here. But it feels like a place where someone is surviving rather than truly living. I think whoever wrote those letters may have recognized that." William set down his coffee cup and really looked at Catherine for the first time since she had arrived. In the morning light, with her hair loosely braided and her expression relaxed, he could see not just her beauty but her intelligence and strength. More than that, he could see how naturally she fit into his home, how easily she had improved it with just a few hours of attention. "Catherine, I have a proposition for you, but I want you to consider it carefully and honestly." "I am listening." "What if the deception that brought you here was not malicious, but well-intentioned? What if we took some time to get to know each other properly and see if the partnership that was promised in those letters might actually work?" Catherine looked surprised but not displeased. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that you stay here for a few weeks, with your own room and complete independence. Help me with the business side of the ranch. Let me show you what the life here would really be like. At the end of that time, if we both feel that we are suited to each other, we could consider a real engagement. If not, I will pay for your passage back to Boston and ensure that you have enough money to re-establish yourself there." Catherine was quiet for a long moment, and William could see her weighing the risks and possibilities of his offer. "William, that is a generous and honorable proposal. But I need to ask you something directly. Are you offering this because you feel sorry for me, or because you genuinely believe we might be compatible?" William stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered ranch that represented everything he had worked for. "Catherine, I spent yesterday evening talking with you, and this morning I woke up to a home that felt alive for the first time in years. I am offering this because I think the person who wrote those letters may have understood both of us better than we understood ourselves." Catherine joined him at the window, and they stood looking out at the winter landscape together. "Then I accept your proposition, William Hayes. Let us see if two strangers can build something real from a foundation of deception." 6 months later, William and Catherine were married in the small church in town, surrounded by neighbors who had watched their courtship with approval and delight. They never discovered who had written the original letters, but they often speculated that it might have been William's uncle's former housekeeper, who had known both his situation and his character well enough to engineer such a perfect match. Years later, as they watched their children play in the yard of the expanded ranch house, Catherine would sometimes tease William about how reluctant he had been to admit he needed help. And William would remind her that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as problems we never expected to solve.